Councillors, I'll now open the meeting and call for apologies and leaves of absence. We do have on the screen, zooming in, Councillor Mears, and we will have Councillor Sutherland coming in shortly. So, sorry, Councillor Sharpen. Councillor Sutherland here. Councillor Sharpen will be coming online shortly. So for the first few minutes of the meeting, he will be an apology, but he will be coming online. So moving to item 2 on the agenda, minutes from the previous meeting. Could I have somebody move their true and correct record? Move Councillor Ron Brook, second to Councillor Sutherland. Any comments on those minutes? Any questions? There being no comments, then I will put the minutes from the previous meeting as being a true and correct record. All those in favour say aye, raising your hand. Carried. We'll now move on to item 3, disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest? Councillor Brook.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to declare 2 separate conflicts of interest for item 9.3. I have accepted a job offer but have not yet started employment at JobLink Plus, who's a primary sponsor of the Fair Day. I've also booked a stall at the Fair Day myself, but I've done that and intend to help staff the stall as a member of the New England Greens branch rather than in my capacity as a councillor. I believe both of those to be non-pecuniary, less than significant conflicts, so I'll be opting to stay in the room for that item. I'd also like to disclose that in relation to item 6.2, specifically the Bendemeer Solar Farm project, in my capacity as a resident before being elected to this place, I have previously made a submission in support of the project to the DPHI. Of course, having a previous position is not a breach of the code of conduct, but I wanted to disclose this regardless for the sake of transparency. I also believe this to be a non-pecuniary, less than significant interest, so I'll be opting to stay in the room for that item as well.
Thank you. Any further disclosures of interest? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 6.2, as the matter will be referred to Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure, but as I'm not part of the planning part of that department cluster, I'll declare a less than significant non-pecuniary interest and remain in the chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to declare a less than significant non-pecuniary interest for item 8.5. I do have a family member who lives in the vicinity of Windmill Hill, where the VPA has been discussed, but I will be staying in the room for that conflict.
You will? Okay. We'll now move on to item 4, Merrill Minute. There is no Merrill Minute. Item 5, there is a notice of motion. Councillor Brook, wish to move that?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll move that as printed.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Rodder, and Councillor Mears put his hand up. Councillor Rodder first. Councillor Brook, you may speak to that.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Councils in New South Wales now have 2 choices when it comes to councillor briefing sessions: stop holding them or open them to the public. What we can no longer do is hold them behind closed doors. That's the rule, and I think the intent behind that is right, even if the implementation has been imperfect, let's say. Mr Mayor, since the start of this year, we have all discussed the impact of losing briefing sessions and how much harder it has made doing our job. The ability to sit down with staff and ask questions and have a back and forth dialogue to work through the complexity of the items being before we vote on them is genuinely important to doing this job properly. So when I look at the options available to us, open the doors and discuss information in the public interest in public, or make decisions, make a conscious decision to limit our own effectiveness, the choice to me is obvious. What I'm proposing is a briefing committee consisting of all councillors operating under the same code of meeting practice rules as a council meeting proper, open to the public to attend in person or watch via live stream. It's a formalisation of what we're already doing. And if we're being honest about this debate, what we've been doing since the beginning of the term without issue, the Tuesday afternoon briefings and workshops, just with the doors open. Following this process gives us an added benefit. If we have legitimate confidential information to discuss with staff, this gives us the means to do so by resolving into a closed session, just as we do during ordinary council meetings. Because again, the options we have been given by this regulation change are that we open the doors or we make a very intentional decision to do nothing about it and accept operating conditions that just 2 weeks ago, every councillor present supported a mayoral minute stating we believe were unworkable. I was also pretty surprised to see the commentary left by staff under the motion. I acknowledge that speaking in a public setting isn't the most comfortable thing to do, but the directors, managers and subject matter experts, many of which are in the chamber tonight, are the same staff who have historically been at our Tuesday workshops and briefings to answer questions. If we have councils want to continue to do our job, questioning and understanding the complexities of the reports that staff write, those questions are going to be asked in a public setting. That can either happen at the briefings committee, where there's time to gather information and take things on notice if needed before a vote, or it can happen at the council meeting where that opportunity may no longer exist. I was especially surprised by the estimate that this change would cost an estimated $100,000 a year to implement. It will require releasing a final business paper at the same time we currently receive our draft paper as councillors, but that draft is consistently very representative of the final paper released a week later. And councillors should remember that before this regulation change, we were already planning to implement exactly that change to allow the public forum to be moved a week before the council meeting, and costs weren't raised as a concern then. So I don't see how opening the doors and running a live stream gets us to $100,000 a year, even if we hired security for every session. But even if it did cost that much, I'd encourage councils to consider how much is the price of democracy. If we are serious about being a transparent, accessible and accountable council, this is an opportunity to show that, and I urge my fellow councillors to support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Brook. I'll now welcome Councillor Sharpen to the screen and to the meeting. Thank you. Do I have any councillors to speak against that notice of motion? Councillor Budd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Brook, for raising this matter. I won't support the motion for a few reasons. Firstly, we find ourselves in this position because of regulations made by the state government, which really do hamstring councils and councillors in trying to work through the volume of information that comes before us, and in fact make good decisions about how our community is affected by so many things. I know tonight we'll hear some evidence in relation to leaders of other councils who say that this process doesn't work, and in fact they're abandoning these committees for lots of reasons. Namely, what it does mean in effect is that we will have an ordinary council meeting every week. Every Tuesday night we'll gather for an ordinary council meeting, the same as we're doing tonight, and the burden of that on staff to prepare that paperwork, to prepare themselves for that council and to do what we're doing here tonight is massive. And I can understand that it will cost $100,000. I actually think it's probably worth more than that in terms of time to prepare. But the offside of the preparing process is also that whilst they're doing that preparation, they're not doing the work they would possibly potentially like to do and expediently doing things in council the way we would like them to be done. It's not just about the money, but that burden on staff, that anxiety on staff to do extra work is just not reasonable in my view. What we have done in an attempt to get as much information to councillors to help us with our decision processing so far, and we did the first one last week, which is a preempt into this meeting, councillors all sat together and we went through the papers under the guidance of the Mayor, who had been briefed, and we discussed these issues, and I think we came to some good conclusions, and hopefully that'll be seen tonight. So I think this is a bit preemptive in terms of what we need to do. We know that local governments across New South Wales have all made massive representations to the Minister and to the Premier to have this silly regulation attended as quick as possible. It's not about whether it should be open to the public, it's about the ability to make decisions and make good decisions for everybody. So in the meantime, I think we have a solution that is working for us. I think we should wait to see what happens with representations in relation to changing the regulations and amending the regulations, seeking some actual consult with government who made these regulations pretty much without any consult. I just feel that we have at the moment an opportunity to address the issues we have in terms of knowledge for councillors and continue the same way without having a massive burden of cost to council and without having a massive burden of work to staff and to councillors. Thank you.
Further speakers in favour? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I support this initiative by Councillor Brooke 100%. It addresses, in part, the Merrill Minute of 2 weeks ago, and it ticks the box for Focus Area 9, Open and Collaborative Leadership, and champions transparency and accountability, genuine community engagement and collaborative decision-making. This is a great opportunity to engage directly with our residents in an open and transparent manner, involving them in decision-making and, I believe, like Councillor Brooke, direct democracy. It actively opposes the politics of the closed shop and the likely phone calls that some councillors may receive from above, advising them, encourage them or directing them how to vote on issues. Under this proposal, the matter will be discussed openly with the public in attendance, and there should be no surprises about the outcome submitted to council for endorsement by their elected representatives. If this motion is voted down, which, let's face it, it is likely, I believe it will demonstrate that we collectively oppose transparency and accountability, and the potential for secret predetermined decisions could prevail. In terms of the 100,000 costs quoted for additional meetings, I was unsurprised to see this, and I believe it is a red herring. However, I would like to know, as many residents would like to know, how much is our annual legal bill costs, such as the payments to Urban Legal. There's a whole range of costs that this council shell out every year, which would be more significant than the cost of holding those meetings in an open and transparent manner. I believe this is a minimal cost to progress and support direct democracy in our community. Overall, I believe any complaints against this proposal are being used as a justification to supplant transparent and accountable council, and I believe should be treated with the derision it deserves. And I would like to congratulate Councillor Brooke for raising this motion, and I will be voting in favour.
Further councillors to speak against? Councillor Sharpen, Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm not speaking against the merit of the notice of motion in particular, because I think the merit and the logic and the reason behind it should be applauded. But what I'm suggesting is we have a process in place that is, in my belief, the most transparent level of government that exists in this country. And I say that because we're here tonight, we're voting on items on the agenda that all members of the community have access to, and particularly tonight because all items are in the open business paper. And members of the community can read up on those items on the agenda in such a way that us as councillors can also read up on the same items on the agenda. So we all have access to exactly the same information as it stands right now. In terms of open engagement and transparency and accountability, we have members of the community who are both watching online and in our chamber tonight, witnessing what we vote for, and I'm sure probably aware of why we're voting for those things in many ways, because the information that we read from is also the same information that they can read from, so that they can view as well. In terms of accountability and transparency with the community, what of the emails and the phone conversations that we have between the two Tuesday nights? Where do they go? Where do all those conversations go? Where does that information go? Where does that dialogue go? It doesn't go anywhere, of course, because they're conversations and emails that people in the community share with us as individual councillors and sometimes with all councillors. Where's the transparency in that? I don't see individual conversations with members of the public in minutes or on agenda items within business papers. So I think in terms of transparency, we do what we can, in my view, and certainly I personally do what I can to ensure that when I vote for an item, I do that with as open mind as possible. But I also do that with ensuring that I understand all of the information in front of me through reading the business paper in the week leading up. But the conversations that we have as elected members and councillors together also support in that knowledge bank that I need to build up to ensure that I make the right decision. So I think in terms of transparency, we have the most transparent level of government in this country. And I, for that reason, believe we already have a transparent process in place. And until such time that this rather ordinary legislation is changed in the future. We need to do what we can to ensure that the decisions we make at council meetings are the best decisions we can make.
Further speakers against? Councillor Mears.
Speaking for, Mr Mayor.
Speaking for? Yep.
Yep. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Now today we have a very simple question before us. How should council receive the information that informs our decisions? And there's not one councillor at the table tonight that hasn't already complained this year about lack of information, that some of the questions and answers we get, we responded to on the night or just beforehand, and that doesn't give us any time to make decisions at the table. So to say that we've got a system in place that's working, every councillor here says that isn't. We have legislation that none of us like, but it's the legislation that we've got to work with. And Councillor Brooks' motion certainly quotes the code of meeting practice that we can have these briefing committees, and in the interim, we should go ahead with them. And let me make this absolutely clear. This motion is not about creating another decision-making committee. It is not about creating another layer of bureaucracy. It is not about taking the powers away from council. The briefing committees would make no decisions, pass no resolutions, determine no policy, and exercise no delegated authority. Its only purpose is to allow councillors to receive information, ask questions, seek clarification and better understand matters before they come to the chamber for a vote. That is all. We already have briefings and information sharing, and let's not pretend otherwise. We already receive briefings, council officers already prepare presentations, senior staff already attend, questions are already asked and resources are already committed. The only real difference is that much of the process occurs outside public view. This motion simply says, wherever practicable, let's make that decision transparent. The question is not how much does a briefing cost, because we're already paying for the briefings. The real question is, what is the value of replacing a fragmented process with one that is open, structured and transparent? What is the value of increasing public confidence? What's the value of ensuring every councillor receives the same information at the same time? What is the value of improving governance? I would suggest those benefits far outweigh any administrative adjustment. Every one of us was elected by the people of the Tamworth region. No councillor should receive better information than another. No councillor should receive information earlier than another, and no councillor should have greater access to professional advice than any other. Every council deserves the same facts, the same advice, and the same opportunity to ask questions in a timely manner before being asked to cast their vote. It is not a political principle, it's a governance principle, and it benefits everybody. It benefits councillors because we make better informed decisions. It benefits council officers because they provide advice once consistently to every elected representative. It benefits our community because people see the information that informs the decisions we make on their behalf. Local government depends on public trust. People do not simply justify our decisions. They judge us on how those decisions are reached. Now, of course, there will always be confidential matters. Nothing in this motion changes that. Commercial information, personal matters, legal advice, those priorities remain. Wherever possible, openness should be our starting point because transparency does not weaken council. Transparency strengthens council. With the costs, if council previously held 3 to 4 workshops every week, surely it can support one transparent briefing approximately every 2 weeks. If we choose not to do so, despite the relatively modest commitment involved, there's a real risk that our community will conclude that we are continuing to favour closed processes over open ones. That is not the message that council should be sending. This motion asks us to embrace one simple principle. When information can be shared openly, it should be. When councils receive advice together, they should. When community can observe the process, they should. Because good governance is simply not about making the right decision. It's about ensuring the community has confidence in how our decisions are reached. Tonight we have the opportunity to strengthen transparency, to strengthen accountability, to strengthen public confidence, and to strengthen this council. For those reasons, I respectfully commend the motion to council and ask for your support. I would like to add just a couple of questions, a question, Mr Mayor, if I may, is Councillor Budd has stated that it could cost in excess of the $100,000 quoted. What evidence or proof does he has on that?
Councillor Budd might like to answer that.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And Councillor Mears, I didn't state that it would. I was just surprised
You
it
did?
only costs that much, just to get the wording right. I think the quote from council staff was 100K, and I said I wouldn't be surprised if it cost more. Thank you.
Based on what?
Thanks, Councillor Mears. Did you have a second question?
No, that's fine.
Okay, councillors to speak against?
I'll say that was for.
Yeah. Councillor Sharpen.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to reject a lot of those allegations about decisions being pushed on us and getting extra information, certain people getting other access to information before others. I'll give an example of last week when we met with you, Mr. Mayor, and we were able to go through the whole paper that's here tonight. It didn't cost staff to have to stay after hours and have overtime costs and time away from their family. And I do understand where Councillor Brooke is coming from and keeping things transparent. But as Councillor Impey said, we aren't able to hide anything. Local government is undoubtedly the most transparent level of government. But in terms of the biggest thing I have against this particular motion is protecting staff. A lot of the staff that bring these reports to council didn't sign up to be in front of a camera and have little snippets of the meeting then posted on social media. I think for me personally, I'd like to make sure we're protecting the staff in this case. And when we have these discussions at workshops, there are almost always confidential pieces of information there regarding costs, contractors, and other contractual requirements within a report. And to be constantly going in and out of moving people out for closing these sessions off, I just don't see how this would work. And from what I've heard, they don't work across the state, so I won't be supporting this.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Sutherland?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank you, Councillor Brooke, for putting forward the notice of motion. I think it's a good debate and conversation for us to have off the back of the mayoral minute that you put forward the last council meeting. I'm in support of this notice of motion. I'm going to speak in support of it. First of all, I just want to clarify that I believe that as a local government, we have all the elements of good governance. Talk around the transparency that we have, the way that we get access to information. For me, as a councillor, when I was first elected on my first term, I was fortunate enough, and I've heard Councillor Impey mention this before, to have a number of workshops around things that are coming up for us to get access to information and discussion with our expert staff. For me, I think that opportunity is now lacking. I'm absolutely frustrated that this conversation now is talking around our community having to pay additional costs, the administrative costs for something like this to happen. This was a decision that was made by the state forced down to us on local government, and now we're talking around potentially tens of thousands, if not $100,000 worth of cost transferred over to us as a local government to have to try to administer. But I do miss that access to information. I do wish that there was times, whether it be the conversation around the aquatic centre and what's going on around the aquatic centre, whether there's conversations around some of the larger infrastructure projects that's coming up. But I like having that conversation with staff. And that means that it's open up to the community to be able to sit in the room and have that conversation with us. I think that that is a process that we should not only be open to, but will allow us to be able to make better decisions moving forward. I do want to point out, though, dot point 4 in the notice of motion that talks around the scheduling of these briefing sessions. Personally, I don't think that they would be required every Tuesday. I know that as councillors, we're already kind of blocked out Tuesdays workshops. We used to be workshops. Now there's a big empty lonely spot on the calendar. But I don't see those briefing sessions happening all the time. I think that it would be a great asset to have the ability to call a briefing session if we need it, when we need it, rather than not have something there and be scratching ourselves afterwards saying, I wish we had an opportunity to get together. So my reason for supporting this, Mr. Mayor, is that I think that it would be better to have it and not use it than not have it and be looking for something moving forward. So I think establishing a committee or a structure for us to get together is a good idea. How often it meets, I think that is a conversation, as dot point 4 says, to be determined by the General Manager for when those sessions are required. So I will be supporting the notice of motion.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor North?
I'll make it the full council to talk on this, eh? I'd just like to commend Councillor Brook for bringing this up. I think his intentions are good. He's trying to find a solution for an issue that we all have. It's complex. I think it's far more complex than most people realise. From what I can see, from when we first started on council as a new councillor this time, one of the things I did enjoy actually was the workshops we were put through. And they were pretty, it was full on for the first 12 months particularly, where every alternate Tuesday we would meet for 2-3 workshops, half hour to an hour each, so it's an hour and a half there. And pre-council meetings we'd do the same, up to 3 workshops. And we got good information on things that were going to come to light and decision-making process over time up to the next 6 months before a meeting or so. If we were to put that, so that's, if we were to do that here where we do it alternately between meetings, that's up to 6 workshops or anything on the agenda I suggest it'd be. It'd be pretty intensive because we're not getting we're looking for more information. So to me, we're going to have 3 to 4 hours on that alternate Tuesday. That's where our money, the cost comes in. It's as well as the preparation for it by staff. It has to be very formalised because we're putting ourselves well on record in the public's view, which is important. But that concerns me, the time for that. The other concern that isn't addressed by this with regard to trying to meet these regulations that I sorely miss, and I think it's a great tragedy actually, is our inability to interact with council's committees now. I really enjoyed the Tamworth Country Music Advisory Committee that we had monthly. It's a very progressive committee with a broad range of industry people, a whole variety of staff. And sadly, we can't be involved in that now. Urban Street Tree Management Committee is another one that quite a few councillors are here on, and we're now out of that. But that's not about, that's got nothing to do with Councillor Brooks' motion. I'm sorry, I digress a bit. I agree. The information coming through from other councils is they've tried this system and it wasn't viable, wasn't working. So that weighs on me pretty strongly. And I tend to think we have a current solution we've only tried for this meeting only. We've just started. It was new. We had an invitation from the Mayor for all councillors to come together and work through the business paper with all questions. Then they can be sent through to staff, through the Mayor, and then filtered back to us. The system can work on paper. It worked this time. We got information back. All councillors had the same information. I'm not sure where Councillor Mears is going with regard to different councillors having different amounts of information, because I think it's pretty equitable and across the board. So for all those reasons, I won't be supporting this motion. I think it's admirable what's been put up, but I'd like to give time for what we're trying at the moment. I think it can work until common sense prevails and there may be some changes.
Thanks, Councillor North. So all councillors spoken. I'll make a few comments. I won't be supporting the notice of motion, and I'll base it on a few facts. One is it would mean that we will be basically having a rerun of a council meeting every second week. It's no more transparent than what the council meetings are now, so there's no more transparency. We are transparent the way we operate now. So the fact that staff would actually have to prepare those briefing sessions in a similar way to they prepare a council meeting, they would be spending all their time actually preparing council meetings. So that's going to take a lot of time out of their space. I base that on some information I'm getting from other councils. Now, Councillor Brooke, in your commentary here, you've mentioned 6 councils. Some of those councils haven't had briefing sessions for months and months and months. I've actually spoken to a few of the leadership teams from various councils. A number of councils have now decided that this isn't working and they're not going to continue with them because it doesn't work. All it's done is create more work for their staff and hasn't had any outcomes. There's been no outcomes. So based on that, and based on that other councils have tried and it doesn't work, I think we'd be foolish to take it on at this point in time when we do have a system that we're putting in place, as Councillor North spoke about. We have a process that we're putting in place where we can meet as councillors, we can talk about this, and we'll talk further about how we might operate that over the coming weeks to make it more efficient. I think that we've got a process in place. Let's not burden ourselves with having to meet here every Tuesday night. Let's not burden the staff with the work that they would have to do to create basically another public meeting in this building. So we would have four meetings a month. The councils that you mentioned there, all of those councils have 1 meeting a month. So they have plenty of time to have that 1 meeting a month, and there's 3 weeks without a meeting and they can fit in a briefing session. We're not like that. We have 2 meetings a month. So basically we'd be having 4 meetings a month. And that, I think that's a bit over the top. It doesn't create any more transparency, Councillor Mears and Councillor Ryder, that you spoke about transparency. There is no more transparency. We would just be having a rerun of the next council meeting in front of the public. The public would come and hear exactly the same thing, exactly the same questions that are asked at council meetings. So there's no more or less transparency by doing this. So, Councillor Brooke, I don't know whether you wish to close the debate. Councillor Ryder?
No, I'm just going to ask a question, Mr Mayor. You mentioned, and it's been mentioned tonight, and it was a question I meant to ask earlier, was the discussions that councillors have had with the leadership crews from other councils. Which councils and what councillors have those discussions been held with?
I've had those conversations with mayors from other councils, and I'm quite happy to tell you that a number of councils, I'm not going to name them all, but they've come to me and said they're pulling the pin on them because they're not working. I don't think I need to name other mayors in this room.
What about the councils? Can you at least name the councils that are going to abandon?
I'm just going to leave it at that, Councillor Ryder. I think they've spoken to me in confidence. They haven't spoken to their councils about what they're going to do, but they are pulling the pin on it because they're not working. So I think it'd be unfair of me and a breach of confidence to talk about what other councils are doing when they haven't had those conversations, but the leadership teams are saying this is what we're going to do into the future because they're not working. I know some of those councils mentioned they haven't had briefing sessions for months. I mean months, not weeks, months. So clearly they're not fulfilling a role. Councillor Brooke, if you wish to close the debate, you're welcome.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I guess I'll just close out by saying that I acknowledge that you've talked to the mayors or some of the other councils that do these briefing sessions that I've named. I think that it'd be remiss of me not to mention that in doing research, preparing for this motion. As you know, I have also talked to some of the councillors on those councils, And that, in your experience differs from mine. That some of the councils I've talked to have reported back that has been a very positive experience, well received by the councils, and also, importantly, well received by the public in those council areas as well.
Thanks, Councillor Brooke, for closing that debate. I'll now call on the councillors to vote. All those in support, please raise their hand. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion is lost. So, staff, did you get those names? Thank you. Councillors, will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is in open council, 6.1. Could I have a move and a seconder? Move Councillor Sutherland, second to Councillor Butt. Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to speak to that? No, Mr. Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation as printed. There's a motion as printed. All those in favour? Aye. Carried unanimously. Councillors, will now go to item 6.2, voluntary planning agreement. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Sutherland, second to Councillor Impey. Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to speak to that? No. Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments, councillors? Or questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I have some questions about how these VPAs came to be in terms of the way they're presented to council and the build-up to it. The papers don't indicate whether there's been a process or how the process of negotiation took place. The question I would ask is, were we involved in a negotiation process with this particular company? And if so, who was involved in that in terms of council staff or council representatives?
Mr. General Manager.
I'm not sure whether the interim director wants to answer or call on a staff member.
I do know that I think one of your staff here was involved in that. They might like to help with that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, we're up right at the start of the process. Negotiations on the detail haven't commenced. As per the papers, we've received a letter of offer from the proponents in accordance with our policies. Staff have evaluated that and presented that to council tonight. The next step, subject to council's endorsement, would be to negotiate the details and then to come back to council with the outcome of those negotiations. And as per the paper, to be the GM and the Mayor who'd be authorised for those negotiations with the subject matter expert staff.
Thank you, Director. That's not quite what the papers represent. The papers represent that these VPAs will go back for the GM and the Mayor to prepare the signing of those papers. It doesn't talk about the negotiation, how we got there. So the concern I have is these are such significant steps forward for this community when these energy projects are forced upon us. And it's clear from the papers before us tonight that one particular proponent is way off the ball. And we're talking about the Middlebrook development. In actual fact, they're so far off the ball, it's almost embarrassing that they treat the community in the way they have and dictate to us what they think we should have, as opposed to being good corporate citizens with a good community licence and participate in what impact's having across the board for all of our residents. Last night, 5 councils attended Allumbra and spoke about another project, and the community angst in there is intense. It's massive. Yet here we are with a VPA proposal before us, and I understand we're probably not going to get any too far with these. It's too far gone with these VPAs. But I'm really concerned about what we do as an organisation and how we negotiate on behalf of our community. So again, I understand your first radio with Tamworth, but you're probably not aware of who the people were that went to do that negotiation, or if there's been any at all. But my expectation personally is that if we're going to negotiate with these groups, we should have a director there and we should have the Mayor there. These are such important agreements that support our communities when these things come through. I'm concerned about that process of negotiation. I want to support it. I want to support our staff in that process. Clearly, last night we spoke to one group, and their view was the council weren't interested in being involved in legacy housing projects. And they relied upon the DPHI information. They hadn't spoken to council. There'd been no negotiation. And if there has, it's never come to the attention of councillors and council. That's a significant gap in where we should be, I think, as councillors representing our community and understanding the passion of the impost on our communities. So, in closing, I'm going to say that I'm disappointed in the Middlebrook offer. I think it's poor, and I think it's really second-hand in terms of the corporate business. I want to impress upon other councillors to voice their opinions about who they think should be at these negotiating tables. What are we bringing back to our community? I don't want a staff member without the authority wearing the badge for not achieving what we want, not being aware of what councillors are thinking. So, moving forward, I would ask that be a standard, a director and the mayor as a minimum, negotiating with these people. I don't believe we're going to do any better than with this because of timings and a whole range of issues, but I think the Bendemeer project and the Kingswood project at least have some merit in the way they've conducted themselves with their social licence and engaged and prepared to support our community. Middlebrook are terrible. And I think when they come down to ask for our services, and they will, they'll come and ask for our services. They'll want council to come and help them do stuff. We should be remembering that they weren't prepared to stump up and support our community in the first instance. Keep that in our minds. We should be thinking about that. When they want our services, we should be thinking about the poor offer they've made our community. Thank you.
Councillor Roddy, you had a question?
Yes, Mr Mayor. It was just in relation to when the funds are raised and then put in council's bank account, how will we determine how they will be spent, particularly in terms of the area where the project is and I guess mitigating public concerns from those areas? Will significant funds be expended in those areas over and above just fixing a road or whatever to get a bit more community buy-in? And I was actually thinking also that just a suggestion, this would be a perfect motion to LG New South Wales conference in terms of moving forward. The fact that it's almost like these companies dish up, this is what we're going to give you, because Planning New South Wales and the government don't insist that they negotiate legitimately with councils largely. If they want, they can give less than what the amount that council has stipulated to them without any recourse whatsoever. And I think it would be good for those companies in good faith to be compelled by the state government to negotiate legitimately with councils and the communities that they represent to ensure that moving forward they get I guess a bit more of a return for the impost of their projects on those communities.
Councillor Rodder, just to answer your question, I had a couple of questions there. The first one is, where's the money going to be spent? The councillors that sit around this table will make that decision. They will make that decision into the future. We haven't got that money yet, but when that money does come, we'll make that decision. Secondly, the government does have minimum rates and per kilowatt. They've got a policy on that, and they have the proponents for these, I guess these projects have to at least meet that. I couldn't agree more with you that we should have right to negotiate for a lot better outcomes than what we're seeing. But I guess the one word that in the statement there is that it's a voluntary planning arrangement. It's a voluntary planning agreement. It's voluntary. So we are between a rock and a hard place when it comes to that. But I agree with you, and I agree with Councillor Budd, that we should have the staff that know the rules and the regulations around what we're talking about when we go to those meetings, but we should have some more senior level people at those meetings and probably try and negotiate just that little bit harder. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. We all know the council is not the consent authority for these projects. It is indeed the state government through the Independent Planning Commission. I guess I had a question, because obviously council has had in place a policy for VPA since 2023, and we are seeing developments going ahead beyond that with much lower values for our community. So what role does the state government or and this could be taken on notice, what role does the state government or the Independent Planning Commission have on setting those VPAs, if any role? And why wasn't our policy taken, seriously at the time that these rates were set in these instances?
I might ask the General Manager to assist with an answer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Impey, they're both good questions. I'll answer the second question first. When the whole renewable energy movement kicked off and councils were facing the prospect of only being given the contributions under Section 712, they were essentially, councils collectively said those contributions aren't enough, and we followed the lead of Armidale Council in saying that we wanted a contribution of a minimum 1.5% of the capital value of the project. I will say that that was really about, I guess, trying to get the state government to adopt that position on behalf of the councils. Those policies were never actually enforceable with the proponents directly, given, as you rightly pointed out, we are not the consent authority. But we were indicating that that would be an acceptable level of contribution to our community for the impost that these things will have, and will give a positive legacy, somewhat of a positive legacy, from some of these projects. The state government chose not to impose those levels of contributions, and instead they did their calculations in a different way, and it could be based on a contribution per turbine, or the megawatts generated, or the megawatts stored by a battery energy system, and so on. And of course, with any negotiation, when you've got two parties at opposite ends of the spectrums, we start with our policy position, the proponents start with the lowest possible rate they think they'd be eligible to pay, and that could be either the contribution under Section 712, or using the state government's mandatory table, which would give them the best result. The idea of the negotiation is for me and the Mayor to take the advice of executive specialist staff to these negotiations to try to put a framework around what the contribution will look like. Obviously, always aiming to get as close as we can to our policy, while the proponent will be aiming to get the lower end. That has to come back to council. It has to be placed on public exhibition before it can be agreed to and adopted. This is really about the first start of the process to say, we know we're starting at our policy position, we know they're starting at a low base, except for Middlebrook, which has already been determined by the IPC. They're starting at a low base. Like any negotiation, we'll come to the table, talk about social licence, community expectations, impacts of the infrastructure in the build on our existing infrastructure, future infrastructure needs, and so on, and that will come back to council for ratification before it even goes on public exhibition, and after that process, then it has to come back for council to adopt.
Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr General Manager. That was a really detailed response, given me there was no notice on that. I just thought of it just a minute ago. Yeah, I find it very interesting to believe that the state government, given that local councils are a division of state government, wouldn't be on our side of the court there, trying to ensure that councils are given as much support and as much advantage out of these projects. And let's face it, pretty much all of them are happening in regional council areas, to ensure that councils can leverage the extra volume of income coming in for the benefit of the communities that live in and around these projects. I find it hard to believe that the state government wouldn't do that. But anyway, I guess that's a comment to take for another day, but thanks for the information.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor North.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, General Manager, for that explanation. That was very good. It's a very complex issue, this, and I thank Councillor Budd for his questions and his thoughts. I echo everything he had to say. We attended 5 councillors, I thought it might have been 6, but anyway, there was a group of us went out to the Landbrook Solar presentation last night, and there was extreme angst by the community there. We saw that, we recognise that. The approval process for that's out of our hands. We are now trying to fine-tune and make sure we get the most for our community and fine-tune around the edges of what's there. it's very frustrating, this whole process. We're new to this, quite a few councillors. It's a whole new process, but we want the best for our community. And as Councillor Budd had said, I think we feel, particularly the Middlebrook project, is treating us with contempt. It was approved under the old guidelines, and they're making the most of that. The Bendemeer project, the Kingswood project, are close to the mark at least. I'd like to think that I like the process that's being outlined. It hasn't been formalised or done yet. It's all on the shoulders of the GM and the Mayor now to push for a better deal. I will note there's a new sheriff in town in Armidale, and he's pushing pretty hard. These negotiations, because it's early on, the first few projects, I believe set the tone for how we go about the future negotiations. We want the best outcome for our communities. The government keep telling us if the rural communities, regional communities are going to wear the impacts of these projects, there will be a legacy. We want to see that legacy. We want better infrastructure. We want funding for infrastructure for the regions that come through this. We want the local communities it's impacting to receive benefits. I think it's important that we see that through. All of those projects, it creates immense anxiety and fear. We saw that last night. Every project, the surrounding people feel that impact. Basically, environmental pollution, a change to their backyard. The area, they need compensation for that. So I'd like to think we can push as hard as possible. I've got faith that we'll do that. So hopefully from now on we'll get some reasonable and just outcomes.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Rodder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I was probably just keen to just vote against it, but I appreciate that this is just a start to the process and of a negotiation. Nothing we can do about the reversing any decisions in terms of the project. As it's been advised, it was not a decision that this council could make. But I just hope that in future, when we have some further reports in relation to this, that some of those figures have dramatically changed, and then moving forward, we can have those discussions with the community how we can expend some of those funds to mitigate and assuage their concerns in the communities that are impacted by those projects.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Mears?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just like to thank all the councillors thus far that have made comment. The questions from Councillor Budd, Councillor Impey and Councillors North and Rodder. It is an issue that I've taken a multitude of phone calls over the last week, even travelling out to Lightning Ridge. The phone's been running pretty hot about it. And I've supported the council position on this, that we don't have much of a choice, but have ensured residents that we will do everything we can to ensure a positive outcome for them. And it's great to see that the full weight of the council is getting behind the residents in relation to this matter.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation as printed, or the motion as printed. All those in favour say aye, raising their hands. Carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll now move into infrastructure and services, and we have item 7.1, provision of bulky household goods. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor North, second to Councillor Sutherland. Councillor North, do you wish to speak to that?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I just give me one moment. I'm sorry. I just need to find.
You're looking for dot point 2.
I'm just looking to move an amendment, if I can, to dot point 2 with regard to the number of free waste vouchers. I'd like to see if we can have that as 4 although
So councillor North, would you like to move the recommendation as printed with issuing 4 vouchers and take the 2 out?
I would like to do that. However, I think
That way it's not an amendment.
I'll move that for the moment, if I can move it that way.
Have we got a seconder for that? Councillor Rook?
And
speak
I
to
think there'll be maybe some other changes, some questions as we go. But anyway, I do commend the Director of Water and Waste for this report. It's very complex. We want to support the community with as much the ability to dispose of the waste as efficiently and quickly as possible. We need to watch our dollars and cents and make sure that fund is balanced. So it's a complex issue. I think we're across most of it, but we'd like to be able to give back to the community there where we can with the number of vouchers for starters.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Councillor Rodder?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm not speaking against the provision of additional waste vouchers, but I know that our residents throughout our region like the bulky household goods curbside collection, and while historically it may not have been utilised by all residents all of the time, it is no different to any of the services I believe council administered by council, which are not always accessed or utilised by our residents all of the time. Furthermore, I believe that the bulky waste pickup had been indicated, had been supported by the community, and it was one that I felt that we should have re-adopted. In relation to rural residents that don't have the benefit of waste services and have to travel to their closest transfer station, utilising one of the 4 waste vouchers they previously received. Now, if it was to have been reduced to 2, it would have really impacted them. I believe that potentially we should be considering increasing those waste vouchers for use at rural transfer stations because they potentially pay for a service they don't get. And you can imagine that they're not really happy that they are paying for a service that they don't receive, and I think that the cost of travel to transfer stations and the use of 4 would be probably used pretty quickly throughout a calendar year.
Councillor Rodder, I'll just answer one of your questions there a little bit, and Bruce might, the Director might like to add to this, but every ratepayer pays an amount of money to make sure that we have a waste facility at hand where we can go. People that are serviced with either the red, green and yellow bins pay extra money for that bin service, whatever that bin service might be, whether it be red and yellow or red, yellow and green. But everybody pays a certain amount of money that we can have those tips the waste facilities, I call them, Bruce, available. That's the money, and that's where we actually talk about the vouchers coming from. So if you give other people more vouchers than other residents that live in other areas, you're actually you're taking away, and I think everybody's got to be treated equally in this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Logan.
Mr. Mayor, whether people are treated equally is a matter for council, but I will say that you're quite correct. Everyone who owns property across the council area pays a base charge for provision of waste services. Now, that means that everyone's paying towards the cost of having those facilities there, whether they use them or not. And that's not unusual. It's the same thing that happens with sewer, same thing would happen with water. They pay a service delivery charge, whether they use any water or not. So, and in fact, with waste, it's different. The charge is different depending where you are. If you're in an area that's classified as regional remote, then they only pay $179 a year. If they're in an urban area, the base charge is $275. Then in the urban area, because they get a collection charge, they pay $213 in additional to get that charge, whereas in the regional remote areas, they pay a gate fee when they take their waste to the facility to dispose of that waste. So there is a discrepancy in the difference in how much people pay annually and the services they provide. again, people, if they get 4 waste vouchers, are able, and in the rural areas, are able to take 4 waste vouchers and pay nothing at the waste collection point. Urban areas, obviously, they've got the same opportunity, but whether they use them as much remains to be seen because they already get a collection service.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Ryder? Further comments, councillors? Councillor Sutherland?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to say that since the removal of the bulky waste collection, that I've been looking in ways to try to support and bringing that back. Talking around the bulky goods collection in that space. We've had some information now put in front of us to say that to reinstate that collection to happen once per annum would cost roughly around $850,000 for that one service across the region. Given the conversations that we've had in this council, and even the previous council, around being as efficient as we can with communities' money, I can't and will not support that cost to reintroduce that bulky good collection for that one-off service. But what I will say is that in replace of that bulky good collection, we've now seen the introduction of the voucher system, and that the vouchers and the 4 vouchers we're talking around issuing didn't exist in distribution where the bulky good collection was happening. And so in replace of the bulky good collection, we're now talking around all residents having access to 4 vouchers to be able to dispose of waste at the tip. But also, what we've seen is the introduction of what's called the Waste Wagon, which is a booking service where community can call up council to come and pick up rubbish from their house and dispose it for them at the cost of 1 voucher and a small fee. I'm in support of increasing that from the 2 days to the 3 days, as suggested in the recommendation. I think that although I can't support the reintroduction of the bulky good collection, I think that the alternative of the 4 vouchers and the waste wagon is a good initiative separate to that. The report in front of us says the same. It's talking around the costing, how it's even more cost efficient. I think it's better for the community. What I would just say is that I would like to see this be picked up. I know it's already been picked up by the comms team, and for us as a council to be able to really let community know that those, none of the voucher systems exist. I know that for a lot of people who are renters, that getting access to those vouchers can be difficult, that there's a system to be able to get access to those vouchers. I think the more we can make that process more obvious, the higher the utilisation of those vouchers can be, and activating the comms team to be able to make sure that the utilisation rate of the vouchers. I've got no worry about the waste wagon being booked to full capacity at 3 days. And even a conversation in the future, I think we might be talking about making that full time. But at the moment, I think 3 days is a good compromise. Not being able to bring that bulky good collections back, which I am disappointed with, but I'm happy with the alternatives.
Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, we find ourselves with an opportunity here we need not waste, because it's an opportunity to look towards the future.
The fun?
It might be. To ensure that the services that are available for people all across our community are the best they can be. Now, when we talk about a process or a system that is equal for all, if we had a truly equal system, we would have a red, green and yellow bin service for absolutely everybody in the local government area. But we don't, because of various reasons. I particularly think that there should be some, I guess, opportunity for those who do live in a more rural setting and don't have any garbage service. I'm intrigued to have maybe access to more vouchers potentially, but I am intrigued to know what a gate fee only service is. But might ask that question in a moment. But before we get to that, I'm in favour of the increase from 2 to 3 days of the waste wagon. The waste wagon wasn't around when I was last on council, between 16 and 21. I was on that council at the time when we decided not to continue with the bulky goods service. Because let's face it, there were streets that looked like rubbish tips for weeks and months on end, and it wasn't a good look. So I was particularly happy to see that bulky goods service disappear, and even more particularly happy in the last council, and I applaud the last council for introducing, and the staff for coming up with the ideas for introducing the waste wagon. I think it's a very good idea. So increasing that from 2 to 3 is a good idea. But just getting back to our challenges we have for more of the rural people who live in our area. If we were to drop from 4 to 2, that would make life particularly difficult for those who live in rural areas. I like the idea of keeping it at 4, even allowing for the fact that roughly a quarter of the residents on the figures that we've been given are using those waste vouchers. So roughly 26% of those waste vouchers were used. So it's not a service that everybody uses, but I think it's a service that's probably more important for some more than others, that they ought to have access to that particular service because it is important for them. And the more rural the people are, I think the more important that service would be, because they don't have a garbage service. So with that, just making sure I check everything here. Yeah. So with that, I'd like to think that there might be an opportunity to consider those people living in rural areas to have their number of waste vouchers increased from 4 to 6. I know it's a little bit two-tier, but I'm sure that council databases and records would have very, very clear records of who lives in our local government area that do not have a garbage service. So I would imagine it would be too hard to roll out. But I wondered what maybe other councillors might think of some of our more rural residents having access to 6 vouchers rather than 2 or 4 in going forward.
Councillor Impey, I'll just say this before I give Councillor Mears the floor.
Mm-hmm.
If you give the rural residents 6, you're going to have to give everyone 6 because everyone's paying for them.
In theory.
In theory and practice.
In practice, well, there are some people who live in areas around Tamworth who don't use any waste vouchers at all. So whilst they might inherently pay for that service but not use it, that's potentially income that council are bringing in for a zero service if they're not using the waste vouchers. So there's a bit of give and take across the board if we think about that big picture. Am I right in that?
Councillor Impey, if you want to move an amendment, you're most welcome to.
Councillor Impey, would you accept that the staff would go away and have a bit of a think around how we might manage a system like that? Because it may be better to do it through an application process, that if you can demonstrate the need because of a location or something like that, just give us a chance to think about rather than making a decision like that on the run at the council meeting.
Yep, which is why I tentatively asked the question rather than demand something as such. But yes, I like that idea. And as I said in my opening remarks, I think it's an opportunity we need not waste to see what we can do in going forward to improve the lives of people in our community. Thank you.
Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm very supportive of Councillor Impey's comments just now on potentially increasing it for people in the rural areas. Where you say that, well, everyone else is going to have to pay for his extra 2, he's now getting no services whatsoever and paying for everybody else's. So on the reverse side of the coin, those in our regional areas are significantly underrepresented with service, yet paying for those services for everybody as well. So it's a two-edged sword on that. I'll give you an example. I received an email today, and I'm not sure if any other councillor got it. I think they may have. It says, I am a rural landowner who does not have a garbage service to my property, full stop. He gets no bins collected whatsoever. I'm paying close to $200, and I think Mr. Logan said about $179 for his yearly services that he has none of. He currently gets 4 tickets, which is not sufficient for his annual garbage to be dropping off at the tip. And also in doing so, he's got to travel a 16-kilometre round trip to and from the tip. His concern was that if he's now paying $178 or $9, or as he said, close to $200, and we were to cut it down to 2 vouchers per year, would he get a 50% discount in his garbage rates or fees, which, to my way of thinking, is that would be better than postage stamping because he doesn't get a service. He's got as much rubbish as you and I or everybody else in the region, but he has to deliver it to the tip himself at his cost and be then reduced to 2 vouchers only. So I'm not sure where we are because Councillor North raised it as potentially 4. Councillor Impey has said, can we increase it to 6? And I think Councillor Rodder may have raised that as well. So when we do go to vote on this, is it being amended or are we waiting for further information to come back to council? And what we agreed to tonight is, do we reduce it to 2, keep it at 4 or increase it to 6 on the vouchers?
Councillor Mears, the motion in front of us is for 4 vouchers for everyone. And the advice from the General Manager to Councillor Impey was that the staff will go away and come back with some more options. Councillor Sharpen.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just on that, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have a bin service, you pay over and above the waste charge, and if you don't have a bin service, you only pay the waste charge. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. So in respect of Councillor Mears' comments, if you have a bin service, you pay a lot more than you do if you don't have one. Further comments?
Just in relation to that motion, if we are to consider extending it to 6 for rural residents, should that be reflected in one of those dot points? And I do note, just in relation to what's been discussed here tonight, vouchers that were issued on the 30th of June 2025 and ended on the 30th of June this year. 54,803 vouchers were issued and 13,484 were utilised. So 24.6% was consumed. I don't think it would be onerous on council to issue more to rural people that do have to use transfer stations to dispose of their waste. And I was also going to ask a question in terms of the disposal costs for the bulky waste. The 430,000, is that an internal council cost, or is that something that the former, the Cleanaway contractor advised that it would cost to dispose of it in landfill?
Mr. Logan.
Mr. Mayor, if I can make 2 comments. The first one, Councillor Otter, is the disposal cost is a council charge. We worked out that we use a cost of $173 a tonne to dispose of in the landfill any waste that's delivered to the landfill. So it's not a Cleanaway cost. The Cleanaway gave us a quote of $350,000 to pick up the waste. The $450,000 is how much it costs us to dispose of that waste to the landfill. So that's the first question. If I can, Mr. Mayor, I don't know that I've explained this very well, but essentially people who do not get a waste service pay about $200 to $250 less than those who do receive a waste service. And that difference offsets the cost of them having to drive to a waste facility and just pay a gate fee. So if we assume that the minimum fee you have to pay is $5, we've assumed that most people pay around $10 to dispose of their waste. You can do the maths. That's saying around 20 times a year they can take their waste to a transfer station or a facility, Forest Road, and they will only pay the same price as an urban property owner who has had that waste collected by a curbside collection. So there's a difference in price to offset the fact that, as councils are pointing out, rural customers have to take their waste have to direct their own waste, travel with their own waste to the facility. So that's the way the charging has been set up. I'm just trying to make that clear to you that there already is that discrepancy or difference between what property owners pay depending on where they live and what services are available to them, and it's up to councillors to work it out, but 20 times a year they can take their waste to a facility, and if they only pay $10 each time to get rid of that waste, then they are paying around the same price as what someone who receives a waste collection gets. And if they've got 4 waste vouchers, 4 of those 4 of those times they don't pay anything.
Councillor Rodder, just to further answer that question, Councillor Impey did raise it, and it's been suggested that the staff come back with some further information on what we may be able to do with going to 6 in the future, but we have a motion on the table with 4 vouchers in that, built into that motion at the moment. So to change that, you'd have to have an amendment if you wanted to, or we wait for some further advice on that. We look at the motion we've got in front of us and look at that further down the track.
Yeah, no, I think that it would probably be strengthen that recommendation if it did have that additional dot point that council direct staff to come back with a report in relation to provision of additional vouchers to rural customers.
You can do that, but I'd have to ask the mover in the second, would they accept that?
Seconder.
Happy to accept an amendment being moved.
It's not, I guess Councillor Rodder's asking, would the mover and the seconder be happy to ask that a report be prepared on?
I'd be happy with that, yes.
Yeah. Is the seconder happy with that? Then if the mover and the second are happy with that, then we can add that to the recommendation as printed.
Debate, Mr Mayor? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just, are we able to make additional comments now that that amendment's been made, or is the rules of debate still stand?
Well, it's the motion.
It's not an amendment, councillor Sutherland.
It's not an amendment.
It's been accepted into the debate.
It's just added to the recommendation, sorry. So Council, is there any other comments before I ask Councillor North if he wants to? Councillor Brooke.
I hate to do this, Mr. Mayor, but as you know, I do have some eyesight issues. Could I get the new text before we vote actually read out? Just to make sure we all understand what the actual
So,
wording is.
Mr.
that we're
Mayor,
voting
the additional dot point will say, request the General Manager to investigate the potential for the waste vouchers to be increased to 6 for rural areas.
Council, you all comfortable with that now? We comfortable to vote? Councillor North, do you want to close the debate?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it was a good debate, actually, good information brought forward, and it shows councillors keen to listen to the community and make changes where we can. I'd like to thank the General Manager for his input too on adding to it a bit so that we have more information and the possibility of making some changes. We'll see how we go. I think that was about it. Yeah, so I think the motion's pretty strong in the end, and we've looked after a variety of people. I will say, actually, for Councillor Mears, that I did actually phone the gentleman that emailed us today. He was concerned about the 2 vouchers. He was happy with 4, but as has been moved, a few more would have gone down very well. So I think we'll have some happy people out there.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor North. Yeah, I can't see the screens at this end are frozen, so I can't see anything, but I say thanks for the information.
Councillors, that closes the debate, so I'll put the recommendation, the motion, all those in favour, raise their hands. Carried. And Councillor Roddy, you're against. Councillors, we'll now move to 7.2. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Brooke, seconder Councillor Impey. Councillor Brooke, you want to speak to that?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, to say that I have been looking forward to seeing this proposed facility get traction and get moving in our area. So I understand the rationale behind the information presented in the report, and I hope that we can potentially revisit it in the future.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments on that recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Raising their hands. Carried unanimously. We'll go to 7.3. Could I have a mover and a seconder for 7.3? Moved Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Impey. Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? Councillor Budd?
Ask a question if I can. Thanks, Mr Mayor. The company IQ that wishes to put their dry waste into our facility, and we're talking about whether it's a 50% or a 25% reduction in cost for them. Do they offer us any rebates or reduced prices for the product they take away from us, or is it just? I'm having troubles in trying to understand what the product actually is. I know it's dry waste, but what is the product that's coming into our facility? And do they offer us any discounts for what they do for us?
I might ask Mr Logan to answer that question.
Mr Mayor, so the product is IQ Renew at Summersby run a largely curbside recycling processing plant, and they take our curbside recycling from the yellow bin to Summersby. They also take other centres as well, and they process it down there. Now it's got contamination in it, stuff that can't be processed, and that's the waste that they have to this point taken to another landfill and disposed of there. For whatever reason, they temporarily, according to IQ Renew, they are not able to take that to that landfill, and they've picked Tamworth as a site to request council take the waste at our landfill. In relation to your question about whether IQ Renew can provide any incentives or other offsets, I think the question is they either reduce their prices they charge us for processing and or transport, or we charge them a fee for delivering the waste to us. That's up to council whether you charge them a fee or whether you say we're not going to ask for any money from you, but we'd like you to reduce the charges that you charge council. And if council wants to reduce the charges that IQ Renew charges us, then I would need some direction about what level you want to reduce them by.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Impey?
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thanks to the Director for a response to the question that was shared with all councillors. Yeah, look, I too am a little bit uncertain about a discounted rate that we should be charging IQ Renew. Or surcharge?
It's not a discount, it's a surcharge.
A surcharge?
It's a surcharge, it's not a discount.
Okay, so
We're charging them more money.
so we're charging 25% or
We're charging them 25% above the normal charge.
not 50%? Which
Above the normal charge, yes.
Oh,
So we're
right,
charging
right.
them a surcharge.
Okay, right,
So
yeah.
that if you
Yep.
adopt the 25%, as the report says,
Yep.
council will generate an additional $218,750 in fees.
All right, thanks. It's so much easier when things are explained. Well, 5,000 tonnes, I think, is the approximate volume of dry waste coming in, if this is agreed on tonight. Can our facility handle that 5,000 tonnes quite easily?
Councillor MP, in the report, it suggests our lifespan of our rubbish tip's about 59 years. This may reduce, this amount of rubbish may reduce that time span by 1 month, over 12 months.
All right. Been some interesting things. I'm sure I heard a figure many years ago that we had around 30 years, and that was about 6 years ago. So
It was, Councillor MP, and because of good management up at our waste facility,
Yep.
it's now 59 years.
Yep.
But this particular recommendation is before us will generate the money, $200,000 for the council, but will only reduce the lifespan of that tip instead of 59 years, it'll be 1 month shorter.
imagine how much lifespan we've got to have with an organics recycling facility, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Brooke.
Question for yourself, Mr Mayor. As a point of clarity, the recommendation is that we levy a 25% out-of-region fee, but am I correct in saying that if a regular out-of-region customer was to turn up at a waste facility tomorrow, the regular fee would levy for them would be 50%?
Councillor, Councillor.
Mr Mayor, yes, Councillor Brooke, that's correct. So for instance, if Bulker or someone wanted to dispose of waste here, the council's fees and charges says that fee would be a surcharge of 50% over and above what the general waste disposal cost is for Tamworth Regional Council residents and businesses. So the recommendation from staff is, given the size of the quantity of waste that's involved here, that 50% is too much, and that we're suggesting 25%. But again, that's a matter for council as to what level of surcharge, if any, they want to apply.
Based on that answer, Mr. Mayor, I would like to move an amendment for point 2 to change the figure percent of 25 to 50 to test to see if there is support amongst councillors to levy the full rate.
Do you have a seconder for that? You have a seconder? You have a seconder there to 50%?
Councillor Mears here.
Yes. So Councillor Rook, do you wish to speak to that amendment further?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that?
Can I just ask a question of the director through you, Mr. Mayor, just quickly, to his best abilities, what is their alternatives for disposal of the rubbish that we may think
Mr.
of?
Logan?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know.
Singleton, Muswellbrook?
No, look, they're driving past Muswellbrook to come to us, so I don't know that they what their alternative is. Respectfully, it's probably not our issue. What they do with it, if we either don't allow it or we set a price that they are not prepared to pay, and I think that probably, if the council agrees with 50%, then IQ Renew may say, well, we're not going to deliver the waste to council, and that's fine, except you need to understand that that's income that we won't receive.
Where I'm going with the point is I think we're their most competitive next best option, and probably 50%, we're probably still that. I know, for example, in Armidale Regional Council, the figures I see up there is a doubling in the charge. They charge double what we charge our residents and businesses for disposal of waste, and that's fairly hefty. So it's not 50%, it's 100%. But unless the director has a comment on that, no.
Mr. Mayor, I've no trouble to me if the council elects to stick with 50%. We will raise that with IQ Renew, and they'll either say yes or no. If they say no, they'll have to find somewhere else. In relation to Armidale, and all the councils are different, Armidale doesn't have as much capacity in their landfill, and it costs them an awful lot of money to establish that landfill. So I'm not surprised that they might have higher numbers for out-of-region waste than we do. But again, that's a matter for the council.
Thank you.
Councillors, we've got the amendment in front of us. Anyone wish to speak against it?
Just another question, please, Mr. Mayor, and probably directed at the director, and that is that just to get some clarity on the rationale behind moving from the 25% away from the 50% surcharge into the 25%. Now, why was that decision made? And secondly, besides the foregoing of the potential income that's listed, what other risks do you see being attached to us having a stance of 50% and then that then being knocked back? What does that potentially look like for us?
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe there's any risk associated with council adopting a figure of 50% and nominating that to IQ Renew, and IQ Renew will say yes or they'll say no. And if they don't bring it here, then, as I say, that'll be their responsibility to move it elsewhere. None of the engagements that we have with IQ Renew require us to take this waste, so I don't believe there's any contractual or moral obligation for us to take this waste. In relation to the question about why we chose 50%, it was 25% previously, and the council chose to increase it to 50%. Look, the background to that is that some years ago, we accepted some waste from Walker, and we charged them 25%. It was a relatively small amount of waste, and we felt that was, for that size, that volume of waste that we accepted from that, 25% was not enough of a premium in this case, and so council moved it to 50%. In this case, which is quite a 5,000 tonnes is a significant quantity of waste, and we said, in my view, that 25% is a suitable premium to charge on over and above what we usually pay.
Further questions, councillors? I have one for Mr Logan. They do collect and take away our recyclables.
Yes, Mr Mayor. So IQ Renew, so what happens is the yellow bin is delivered up to, the contents of the yellow bin is delivered to Forest Road by Cleanaway. Council then, IQ Renew then picks that, or council loads the trucks, but IQ Renew own the trucks or the contract. They take that waste from the recyclables from Forest Road to Summersby. We pay IQ Renew to transport it to Summersby, and then we pay IQ Renew again to process it at Summersby.
So, Mr Logan, my question there is, if that's the case, how long has that contract got in to run? And is there a risk that they could pull the pin on our that collection service if we're not seen, reasonable to work with?
Well, there's nothing in the contract that that they could rely on to do that. There's no requirement that we have to accept waste from them if they so desire.
No.
So
For them to take our recycles.
they have a contract with us for the life of the, and I can't remember the period for the life of the processing and transport, but it's not for 12 months, it's for longer than that. And as I say, there's nothing in the contract that would allow them to legally or under a contract say you've not accepted our waste or you're charging us too much, therefore we're not going to continue to supply a service that we've engaged or contracted to you to provide.
Yeah, that's the only risk I saw there. Thank you. Further comments, councillors? Councillor, we have the amendment in front of us at 50%. The motion is printed, but we're looking at a 50% surcharge. Could I have all those in favour raise their hands, please? Those opposed? That means the amendment is carried. The amendment now becomes a motion. The girls, I oppose that 50%.
So you need to put to the vote.
Pardon?
You've already said the amendment became the motion, you now need to put it to the vote.
Yeah. So now that is now the motion. I need to put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors, we now move to item 8.1. Could I have a mover and a second to move Councillor Bard? Second to Councillor Impey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Undoubtedly, this will create some conversation within community and at this table. However, what this actually does is provide an opportunity for Tamworth to reaffirm their relationship with Sanahe in Japan and explore the opportunities that may present in terms of business, education and a range of issues which perhaps are unknown to us at this point in time. What we do know in our area is we're getting lots of international inquiry in relation to the things we're doing here in Tamworth, and this presents an opportunity to go once again and explore that. In support of this, we know that we have an agreement in principle from our local Chamber of Commerce who are interested in also attending and seeing what that can build for their organisation. And today it was confirmed that the UNE, again in principle, are interested in also participating, should those protocols be allowed. But this is creating great interest in community. We probably have a bigger presence here, which will be expanded upon through later comments, I'm sure, from the Japanese community than we perhaps know about. So I understand this will be a controversial conversation within our community as they try and see value in that. I commend it. I see it as a brilliant opportunity to expand our exposure internationally and get inside a global market potentially. I commend the motion.
Any speakers against?
If I may, just historically at the beginning of a council term, councillors would be nominated to sister city to be basically representatives to each of the sister cities. That seems to be this trip, Nashville and Gore all seem to have been stepped away from that arrangement with councillors, and I think historically, Councillor Mears, I think he was New Zealand historically, and but I'm not saying that those councillors need to go, but I just thought that historically, at the start of a term, councillors would be nominated to represent council at each of the sister city cities that we have that arrangement with.
Councillor Roddy, you are correct. That was something we did in the past, and each council, and Councillor Mears, if he hadn't wanted to go to New Zealand, was entitled to do that. What happened was we had a sister city committee, and as part of that committee, the elected councillors that had been delegated to various sister cities would attend those meetings, and there would be some dialogue that would be created through that process. We don't have that sister city committee anymore, and I might ask our governance, Karen, to make some comments on how that actually happened. I think it was just lack of community input.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. We did have a sister city committee. The attendance of that sister city committee waned, so we dissolved that committee and created separate committees for each of our relationships, and a councillor was appointed to that under the committee structure. That also fell by the wayside, so we don't actually have a committee, sister city committee, or any of those committees anymore, and it's been managed internally through council staff with those relationships since then. So that's why you're not allocated to a particular relationship anymore, because we don't have those committees.
Councillor Rodder, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, Mr Mayor. Would it be fair to say that some of the sister cities that we have had relationships with have probably gone by the way, like Tamworth, England? I don't think anyone's been there probably since Tamworth City Council existed. Would it be best to abandon some of those and the sister city with China? It's been a while with that one. I mean, it's really only we've had obviously the United States, New Zealand, and Japan have been the only obviously ongoing relationships. And I can remember when the mayor of Sanahay came to Tamworth, but would it be best to think about collectively what the way forward with?
Councillor Rodder, I don't disagree with you, and I think that we could ask our staff to perhaps come back to us with some sort of report on the activities between the sister cities that we currently have on our books, and what that looks like, and what it might look like into the future if we as a council, as elected reps, decided to reconsider some of those sister city arrangements, and I think that'd be a good report for us to have a debate about. You got any add on to that?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. And in fact, Councillor Rodder, there has been some changes. We're now obligated by the federal government to nominate any foreign relationships that we have. So definitely a review of the China relationship would be something we would have to submit for federal approval as well if we were to reactivate that relationship. Most of the sister cities, as I suppose they did for everybody, went through that real lull through the COVID period, and then opening up borders again and people's willingness to travel and so on. And you are right, Gore, Nashville and Sanahay have been the most active of our partnerships. In fact, Sanahay has had a long-term relationship with local high school where they've done student exchanges and so on for, language and protocol and culture and so on. So yes, I think it's definitely worthwhile us reevaluating those other ones. The Tamworth one, I've been here 16 years and I can never recall any correspondence or anything with that. It was simply based on the name, that's what we were named after. And I think it's, appropriate for council to review the sister cities that we do hold.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I was surprised by the comments made by the compliance officer around the sister city committees, because I don't believe, or I don't recall them in the last term of council either. And yet, as Councillor Ryder said, we sat around the table, the visits were discussed, and people had an opportunity in a public forum, in a private forum with the councillors to put in an expression of interest to whether they wanted to go or not. Obviously, since this council's formed, this is now the third occasion, I think, where council's been presented with a sister city delegation without any meaningful communications, consultations, or opportunity provided to all elected councillors. The first occasion, obviously, the delegation was to our sister city in Gore, New Zealand, and at that time I clearly and forcefully raised issues about a lack of transparency, the lack of equity, and the failure to provide every council with an equal opportunity to represent council. Again, no expressive interests were put out. We are a council, and if there is no committee for an issue, the council should be deciding these matters, not matters decided out of our presence and behind closed doors. Those concerns of mine were raised publicly. The concerns are explained, my concerns were explained clearly, and those concerns have obviously been ignored. Now we find ourselves in exactly the same position again. I don't believe that we continue to ignore this pattern. Once again, opportunities to undertake council business appears to have been reserved for a very small number of councils, while others are not even afforded the basic courtesy of being asked whether they wish to participate. This is not openness, it is not transparent, and it is certainly not equitable to all councillors elected. And this is not about who's attending, whose names are on the motion. This is not about personalities, and this is not about preventing anyone from representing council. This is about whether every elected councillor is treated equally and whether the process of this council are conducted in a way that the community can have confidence in. When the same people continue to receive opportunities while others are excluded from even expressing an interest, the perception created is one of favouritism and preferential treatment. Whether that is the intention or not.
Point of order.
Section 1511, item C, which is imputing the reputation of council and councillors. The fact of the matter is this: last Tuesday, this was put before all the councillors who attended and spoke about the matters in this paper. This has not been hidden from anybody. This has been quite transparent. And if Councillor Mears reads the papers, every councillor is entitled to go, should he wish to make that decision. So the imputation against councillors and council staff is not acceptable. It should be withdrawn and an apology. Thank you.
What do you think, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Mears, I actually think if you read the recommendation as printed, what all of that you've said is actually totally incorrect and probably should be withdrawn, because it actually says authorise other delegates to attend. That includes anyone sitting around this table can put their name forward.
Well, it's a pity that that wasn't articulated clearly, because there's nothing come out in emails, and obviously there's many of us at the table that can't get to every meeting. And I've asked this of other councils and they have the same opinion, but I'll leave that for them to speak to as well. So I won't withdraw the comments. I just think it's a sad day when we go through the year and people have got things in place. If we were spoken to at the beginning of the council period, we could make our own arrangements with leave or other options to be able to attend events of this nature. So I won't be withdrawing my comments, and until such time as there's a more open process, I'll continue to vote no against this sort of type of motion.
Councillor Mears, I think you've really said what you've said, but it's actually contrary to what the recommendation here is printed out, and it says authorise any other delegates that want to go can put their hand up, and that's been in that recommendation and was discussed at our briefing. between councillors? I know you weren't there, but it was discussed at that briefing. Councillor Rodder.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I just wanted to see clarification in relation to the Code of Meeting Practice. It was quoted as 1511C, because I look at C and that Councillor Mears has not even come close to breaching 1511C.
Section D, Councillor Rodder. Section D.
B?
D for dog.
I'm sure I heard C, that's all.
Councillor Rodder is correct. It is D. I said C. I was incorrect. It's D, and there should still be a withdrawal and apology.
Okay, you're withdrawing, but Councillor Mears, you're completely wrong, because every councillor that's sitting around this table has the opportunity tonight to put their hand forward, and that was discussed at our meeting last week when the councillors sat around the table. I know you weren't there, you were away, but it was discussed at that meeting, and it is here in front of us all tonight for everyone to see. Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, can I just add that we all have access to the same papers for the same period of time as each other?
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Sharpen.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, that was discussed at the previous delegation that went to Gore, and I know that Councillor Mears was there when we said, if you want to go, you can add your name.
Absolutely.
So, in relation to this particular delegation, Mr Mayor, there's currently 30 students from Japan attending Karinya Christian School, and these sorts of relationships that we have with these sister cities really boost those opportunities for our kids to have, to go across and do these student swaps. If you look at Sanaho, they have a lot of, they're very, very forward on the ag tech world and what they're doing in agriculture and what their processes and what they're doing to grow food is something that we can learn from, and I can see this being a really beneficial visit for Sanaho. And I would encourage other councillors, if they're available, to put their hand up and go.
So I will ask you, are there other councillors that are interested in attending?
I would, Mr Mayor, but I think the cost is enough now, and mine wasn't about who's going, but again about the processes.
I'd be happy to withdraw if another councillor would like to go, Mr Mayor, to avoid the costs.
We can have, the General Manager said he would withdraw if there's another councillor who wants to go and you're worried about the cost. The costs are covered in the budget that's already in place.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mr General Manager, but I do believe that as the head of our council staff and the General Manager of council, it's very important that you do attend, and I certainly wouldn't be, as was with Gore as well, I wouldn't seek my attendance at your removal from that group.
Other councillors, there's no other interest? Councillor Sharpen, are you showing any interest?
I may, but I may just do it on my own back because I'll be doing another trip through Europe. But I've got a lot to do before that.
So Councillor Sharpen will put you down as a tentative?
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor North.
I will just comment and so we get this all back on track, I guess.
Yeah.
And the debate's good. Debate is good. We all have our input. I'd just like to show my support of this recommendation. Coming from a business angle, I think it's great that in some ways this is turned into a trade as well as a cultural exchange. To have an expression of interest from the Tamworth Business Chamber is great, fantastic. And from the University of New England too, I think it's showing the potential and what this is all about, particularly from a business side of point of view. We're becoming a global economy, so we have been for quite a long time, but we need to be outward looking rather than inward looking. It's part of why Tamworth is so great and why it's performing so well. Our economy is booming, our unemployment rate is so low, our growth, our trade that we do is leading the state, if not the nation, as a regional economy. and it's all because we're proactive in these things. So I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's great that we're tacking on calling into Singapore Airlines headquarters and touring that facility. That's at the invitation from Singapore Airlines, and it's a great example of what these things bring, international relationships, and there's plenty more to come from it, I think. So we've got to be proactive in these things. I think it's a great initiative. I'd like to think that we could keep our sister city relationship with Tamworth, given the same names and our historical background there. So, but I think we need to reach out to some of these other sister cities and see what's still happening. It'd be a shame to lose them.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I can't support the recommendation as printed. I do believe that this is the third in about 12 months, and I think that residents generally would probably have preferred us to err on the side of conservatism in terms of how many people attend. In terms of business, we talk about business and what we could do. We can share that sort of stuff by Zoom or Teams, and if there's documents to be signed, there's DocuSign that could be used to sign documents these days. We don't actually have to be there in person anymore. We can do that all digitally. You know, but council had embarked on, in the last 3 years, we've imposed a 36.3% rate increase. We've embarked on significant asset sales. We have blowouts in significant projects under construction or proposed for construction, and I just think that the residents of our local government area expect us to understand that they are suffering, and cost of living pressures that we've also added to that burden with rates, fees and charges increases, and I think that they would like us to be a bit more responsible in the way we spend their money.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Brooke?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm sort of thinking on the fly here, but getting to Councillor Rodder's point about the concern in the community about cost for this, I do note that Councillor Sharpham did sort of note that did say that he would be willing to do this on his own expense, as he might be in Europe already at the time, and I wanted to commend him for that. I think that's very honourable. In an effort, I guess, to appease some of the community concern about the cost of this, do you think it would be appropriate to maybe reflect that in the text that's on the screen there? So I guess by adding the words "at his own cost."
Councillors, the mover and the seconder of that recommendation? No. We haven't applied that in the past, but as the mover and the seconder happy with that? No. You are happy? You're happy with that added? Okay. Not.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, if that's the intent of Councillor Sharpham, and then I have no objection to it.
You what, sorry?
If that's the intention of Councillor Sharpham, and then I have no objection to that.
I'm still no further. Was that your intent, Councillor Sharpham?
It is, yeah.
Okay. Further comments, councillors? You want to close the debate, Councillor Budd?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It is good to have debate on these issues and be responsible. The key word was spoken about, it's been mentioned twice in this debate, it's about the global economy and how we fit into that and what that potential comes to us. So in the Chamber of Commerce, at the very first opportunity, recognised that they might be able to bring something back here, which in turn could create apprenticeships and more business and more manufacturing and increase on our current standing in New South Wales as the #1 regional city, not connected to a major centre, have the highest growth. We are the highest growth city in New South Wales, not connected to a major city. That's a magnificent statistic. And that's on the back of lots of international work and exports. For UNE to recognise that there's an education part of this for them to be involved in is also significant. 30 students, Japanese students in our city already. There's been previous programs of exchange which should and probably could be exploited further to benefit for our community. But also, Sanahay is an agricultural area with about 8,000 people, so it's a place the size of Gunnedah, a little bit bigger. It's productive, and what they do in their space could very well lead to benefits to our community. So I commend the motion, and hopefully we get to infirm that relationship in person. I don't agree with the fact that Zooms are a suitable way to have these relationships, professional relationships. I think that might be all right from town to town or office to office, but when we're dealing with an international audience that require respect, then it should be in person. Thank you.
That closes the debate, councillors. So all those in favour of the motion, please raise their hands. All those in favour, those opposed? Councillor Mears and Councillor Rodder. Councillors, will now to go to 8.2. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Sutherland, seconder Councillor Impey. Councillor Sutherland, you wish to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Anyone wish to make comment?
As someone who frequents Bunnings quite regularly to see the classic fire engine club running a sausage sizzle, I'm really pleased with this. It's exciting for them. I think the Victoria Park precinct or the Oxley Reserve precinct is a precinct with an enormous potential. We already have a number of services programs and community schemes up there, and I think an addition to that number of tenants, if you like to call them that, is a really good addition, and I applaud the staff's work and the ideas that originated from someone, whether it be the fire engine club or the staff or combination of the both, to make this happen. I think it's a really good step forward.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll just add one comment, and that is I have spoken with that group, and they're very keen to get some grant applications in, and if they do, they plan to put a front on it that people can look through, like a big glass front, where people can look at restored fire trucks as they visit the park. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us to enhance what's actually happening up in that area. So thanks to the staff for putting that together, and thanks for them for doing the work they do. All those in favour, councillors, of that motion? Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to 8.3. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Bard. Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Raising their hand. Councillors, we'll go to 8.4, investments. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Sorry? Yeah. Councillors, I'm out of order in my business paper. So my numbers are wrong. I'm not quite sure what's happened there, so I'm going to have to go to 8.5 on mine, which is 8.4. Council's annual operational plan. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor North, seconder Councillor Impey. Councillor Impey, North, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any comments? I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Oh, Councillor Impey.
Sorry, just a comment, and I read that that overall income for airport fees and charges is set to achieve 99% of its original $5.8 million budget. So we've certainly come a long way out there since COVID, when we all know what happened during that time. So it's really good news.
Any further comments, councillors? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Raising your hands. Carried unanimously. And now we'll go to 8.5. Councillor. So that's 8.5, isn't it? Voluntary planning agreement. Letter of offer to Windmill Hill. Could I have a mover and a seconder? What's happened there? Councillor Sharpen? Seconder, councillor Budd. Councillor Sharp, and you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, no thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments? Councillor,
Like, the question I'm keen to know is, isn't it true that historically developers are required to include open spaces or recreational parkland as a conditional of their approval for subdivisions? And in relation to this, if the answer is yes, it would be fair to say that we probably aren't getting anything that the community aren't already entitled to get in terms of that, the park that is proposed to be provided to council out there. I would have thought that there would have been a significant green space already proposed and included in that, because I do believe that that a land swap would not be necessarily a desirable outcome. I thought it would be best if a developer wanted some council-owned or publicly owned land, that an acquisition would be better than a handover of land.
David?
Charles, can you turn yours off?
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Rodder, you are right that it is typical that through a subdivision approval process there is some requirement for open space or parkland. However, when this particular development was approved some 20 years ago by this council, that wasn't put in place. So there is no obligation of this proponent to provide that. That's why this arrangement is put in place. And the most appropriate arrangement, in our view, to get the outcome, which is the provision of public space, is through this proposed agreement and the land swap arrangement.
That answer your question, councillor Rodder?
Look, because I did, I was even looking at value general land valuation and the handover of land and the amount that council would be out of pocket. I realise there's that, on the one side there's that public land that's to be provided, but I think it's a benefit to a developer to be providing that anyway, even if it wasn't agreed with 20 years ago. I think that to enhance the development of that site and a subdivision in that suburb generally, that would be a given that you would actually have a significant piece of green space, and therefore, the parcel of land that's going to be impacted by the swap that is required for the pub. It's still a significant amount of money that we would be transferring to a developer.
Councillor Rodder, I might ask the General Manager, there is a bit of history to this.
Mr Mayor, I think there's just one very key point that council need to keep in their mind, is that this land that we're doing the swap back to the developer for was gifted to council free of charge in the first instance for the provision of open space. So we're essentially just giving back a very small portion of the land that was actually given to council by this very developer at no cost.
Councillor North?
Can I just note that I thought most of this was covered in a response this afternoon in detail, and I thought it was gave good clarity on it. I thought I actually saw somewhere, read that the developer is also looking to add to the block of land he's swapping with us, which is a much larger block, playground equipment or general park equipment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So we have further wins here as a result of it, as the way it was my interpretation of the information given. Thank you for that.
Further comments, councillors? There being no... Councillor Mears?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question to the General Manager, if I may. With that talk about the equipment being provided, is that in writing at the moment? Is there a contracted commitment that happen? And if that is done, who's then responsible for the upkeep of that park?
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Mears, yes, we have a written letter of offer from the developer in relation to the provision of the neighbourhood park on the land that is the subject of this agreement, and subject to council's resolution tonight, we'd go through all the normal steps to lock that in through a VPA, and then ultimately the park would come to council and we would maintain that as part of our normal open space program.
That answer your question?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Further comments? There are no Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to make the comment to say that this is why planning is so important. You know, I know that often we would talk around the planning process, whether it be the LEP or the DCP or whatever that looks like. Sometimes it can be overlooked that the decision that's made now is going to have an impact in 20 years' time. And that now I agree with Councillor Rodder in saying that it's strange and slightly absurd that we have entire communities that have been approved without open green spaces to that level of embellishment. And then that's why the decisions we make today are so important moving forward. Just a question through the Mayor, maybe for the Director of Regional Services, and that is just that I know through our open space management guide it talks around what the embellishment of a neighbourhood park looks like. I also know that there's a lack of public amenities. When you talk around that, obviously missing the planning. Is there any potential that there could be a look at the creation of public amenities like a toilet or something like that? Or are we thinking, what can community expect to see on the ground in that park when we talk around that level of embellishment?
Mr. Resch.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I'm not quite sure, Councillor Sutherland. I'd have to check on the exact embellishment of the neighbourhood parks. I could have a guess, but that wouldn't be really smart. I'd have to take that on notice.
Thank you. Further questions, councillors? There are no further questions. I'll put the motion as printed. All those in favour say aye. All in favour? Councillor Rodder? You're in favour? Against, thank you. Councillors, we're now on to
8.6. Exactly the same as your 8.6, audit and risk.
Yeah, that's 8.7.
8.6, you're out by one.
Councillors, we'll go to 8.6, Audit and Risk Committee. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Sharpen, seconder Councillor Sutherland. Looks like we've lost Councillor Mears. You want to speak to that, Councillor Sharpen?
No, thanks. I'll reserve the right.
Anyone wish to speak against the report? Any comments on that report? There being no comments, I'll put the recommendation as printed, or the motion as printed. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously.
Now you can just
Now we move to community services. Feasibility 9.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Brooke, seconded Councillor Impey. Councillor Brooke, you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start by once again thanking Councillor Impey for his shared advocacy on this issue from the beginning. And I'd also like to thank the Tamworth swimming community for the way they have really campaigned on this. They demonstrated something that for a regional capital like Tamworth, I think is very important, that access to winter swimming isn't a nice to have. I think it's required infrastructure. You know, rehabilitation, learn to swim programs, competitive training, community fitness. These things shouldn't stop in April just because an outdoor pool closes. And because of that, I want to acknowledge what this report is, and it's good information from experts, provided transparently in response to a community concern. And I thank the staff as well for their work in putting it together, because I think it's important that the community has access to these cost estimates, and that's exactly what Councillor Impey and I were asking for when we initially raised the notice of motion that led to this. I also think we need to acknowledge the wider context here. Look, the Aquatic Centre remains our primary goal for year-round swimming in Tamworth, and we all want that project to succeed, I believe. but it has experienced significant budget pressures. And if we can't secure the additional funding needed at the state and federal government level to absorb those cost increases, we will need to look at alternatives. Katingal Pool, with a central location in our LGA, its accessibility to the whole region, its manageable size for heating purposes, represents a relatively quick and cost-effective option for winters compared to most alternatives if we have to look down those routes. And even if the aquatic centre is built on time, the report also points to something worth putting on the public radar now, I think, and that's that our outlying pools for our region are ageing infrastructure. It may well fall to a future council and not this one, but sooner or later we will need to have the same conversation about those community assets that we're currently having about the Tamworth pools. Those will be significant decisions for those communities that depend on them, and I think we're better off beginning those conversations alongside the public now, rather than waiting until we are forced into it. And I think this report may be able to be used as a useful starting point in that, and for those reasons I commend it.
Anyone wish to speak again? I mean, you can speak against. It's a report that we're just receiving and noting because it's just a report on preliminary costs. So I doubt that anyone else wishes to make comment. Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thank also the staff for providing the insights and information for the community and also for the councillors. I'm convinced that an informed community is generally a happier community. Most of the time, people just want information. They don't like to see decisions made where there is a lack of information, and sometimes the lack of information also occurs in our backyard as councillors. So we ask for more information. I think this is a classic example where the more information was provided, and we thank the staff for doing so. Just on the future, yes, winter water, as I coined a couple of councils ago or meetings ago, is critical for our community, not only for those who perform in a swimming sense and a performance sense, although we have seen some great success at the Commonwealth Games, and one of my students in the last school holidays at school, year 11, competed in the Commonwealth Games trials. So I expect to see her name on the boards in some stage soon. She's a talented swimmer. But I'm thinking that the private sector have had a change of heart, and I'm of the view that they are perhaps renewing their pool just in time for later use and potentially for late winter or next winter. Is that correct? I think I've read somewhere that the private sector are looking at re-establishing their water area. Yep, which is good news for the community. I think we should be doing everything we possibly can to ensure this aquatics facility goes ahead. And not only for swimmers, but as I said, for safety use. Children who need to learn how to swim. Children who need to participate in programs for safety reasons. It's critically important that we make sure that this facility is available in going forward for future winter water purposes.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the motion as printed. All those in favour of accepting that report? Carried unanimously. Councillor Mears is now appears to be absent from the meeting, so
We'll just note that.
yeah, just make a note of that.
Mr Mayor, he has sent a message indicating that he is attempting to get back online, but he had dropped out.
Actually, looks like he just rejoined.
So, councillors, we'll now go to item 9.2, Central Northern Regional Library minutes. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor North, seconded Councillor Brooke. Councillor North, you wish to speak to that?
I will briefly, Mr Mayor. This is another committee that I'm part of, and sadly I think I'll be missing it for a while. I'm not sure. I'd like to thank Kay Delahunt for putting this report together, but also how she runs this, the overall Central Northern Regional Library Group. It's a great community to be part of, and I thank her for staying back tonight. It's getting pretty late. It's a great community to be part of because we get a whole range of councillors from other councils come along, which I doubt that'll be happening. I'm not sure how it's going to run because it's chaired by a councillor from Walker. We have a councillor usually from Muralla, someone from Bingara and someone from Corindai. So it's a great get together and we get to see how it's all going. We moved to upgrade complete the digitalisation van project, which is a great project for moving things about, and establish the Recollect database as well, I notice in there. That meeting was held in June, and as I said, it was a good meeting, so I'm not sure where we're going to go moving forward with this with council representation, but I urge other councillors to adopt this report.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the report, the motion as printed. All those in favour of accepting?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll go to 9.3. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move councillor Brooke, seconder councillor Sutherland. Councillor Brooke, you wish to speak to that?
Reserve the right, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments? Councillors, I'll put that motion as printed. All those in favour say aye by raising your hand.
Aye.
Unanimously. Councillors, that brings us to the end of our council meeting. There are no reports to be considered in closed council, and I'll now declare the meeting closed.